A lot of Tarkov's elements and mechanics have changed with this hardcore wipe, one of which being the Hideout, and many would argue it's just genuinely worse off. While we no longer need found and raid items to count for the module installations and upgrades, to compromise for that, BSG has made leveling up the Hideout that much harder by increasing how much we need to collect. That alone is a fair trade. I use that word loosely. The things we find now don't need a survival status to be useful, and we can still apply them to the Hideout should we get sent back to our stash prematurely. But now, even after about a week of playing, I don't even have all of my modules installed to level 1. It's been a very slow process, even just getting the foundation of the Hideout set up. On top of that, I'm quickly running out of room because I have so many items I may or may not need depending on whether I keep going with the Hideout or not, which is a valid question people are probably asking themselves. Which has got me thinking, is it even worth it to invest in the Hideout this wipe? There's more to it than just needing more items, so let's break it down and have a conversation about the Hideout within the context of this wipe and what it might look like when 1.0 releases later this year. The first major hurdle to tackle this wipe is that we now need about twice as many items per module to get them going, which doesn't sound too bad until you realize those number of hoses, bolts, screws, and light bulbs just jumped up an insane amount. Just for water collector level 1, we now need 8 hoses, which sure you can craft, but that just means we need to either find more items in the world and boof them in our container, or spend a ton of time and resources crafting them. And as far as I can tell, the amount you make when you craft items hasn't been brought up either, meaning we're now just in a complete deficit, which I understand was the point given the context of a hardcore wipe. However, this is maybe one element of the whole thing that I just simply don't agree with. Difficulty and tedium are two different adjectives that can be used to describe different parts of this hardcore wipe. No flea market? That's more difficult. Transit points being the only way to get around for the first 2 days? That was also difficult. But needing to sink more items into the Hideout is not difficult, that is tedious. Sure, looting is an important part of the EFT gameplay loop. Going in, questing, fighting other players, but that third pillar of the game has always been looting. Not just other bodies, but the world around you as well. We've all had those moments where you go into a raid with a game plan, and eventually, while looting, find something that makes your neurons activate in your brain and your entire plan to be thrown out the window. Now the only thing that matters is survival, which begs the question, is it even worth it this go around to work on the Hideout? A serious question you have to ask yourself this wipe is, how much do you plan on actually using the Hideout? And depending on that answer alone, it should dictate how you manage your inventory and whether or not you hold onto barter items. How much do you plan to craft now that items for resale are less lucrative than they previously were? How much space are you willing to lose in your stash to Hideout items? I've already lost about a third of my stash, and that's with no junk box because even those got more expensive, climbing up to almost 2 million rubles. Money is tight enough in the game right now as it is, but with it being harder to come by in general, who's willing to dump that much money into something that stores items you may not use for their intended purpose? Nothing about the Hideout changes makes the game harder because the Hideout was already an optional mechanic you don't need to engage with to be successful. It's something else for you to do with your time. If you're a scav main, it might be worth engaging with, but then scav timers are much longer, meaning those people are going to struggle to get their Hideout up and running. But at the same time, who wants to dump 8+ hoses into water collector? Or I'm guessing 20+ light bulbs into illumination. And what's worse is that there are less crafts in the Hideout as a whole. BSG has removed some of the crafts that were previously there, specifically some of the more powerful ammo crafts from the workbench. Now, for some people, this will not be felt, nor would you even know they were removed unless you got to a point where you had access to them in the past. Many of the good crafts in the game are locked behind late game quests, so if you wanted the ability to make the good stuff, you had to work for it. But now with their complete removal, combined with additional resources needed to build and upgrade, we as players are working harder for less. Ignoring the obvious allegory for what's going on in the real world right now, it just feels like the wrong approach for how this all should have been handled. There should have been a ton of basic crafts for the items people use in pretty much every raid. How we are able to craft a variety of AK platforms, but not a single craft for an M4 is still wild to me to this day. The timers have also just been an awful mechanic as a whole since the start. It feels like trashy mobile game shenanigans. If we must have timers, they shouldn't be longer than someone starting a craft, doing a quick scav run, and then by the time they come back, that craft should be complete. The Hideout still has so much potential, but it's being marred by atrocious decisions that makes it so toxic to engage with that it's not even worth it at all. And now, I am seriously considering not using it at all with how many items we need to keep around. It's just not worth it, well, at least to me. Hardcore has a mix of changes that are both making the game more challenging but still rewarding, but also more tedious and unfun at the same time. The Hideout changes while removing the found in raid requirement is nice. The sheer volume of items you need for even the level 1 modules is too high. I figured it might have been like a 10 or 15% increase, but it's upwards of 50 depending on the module. It's just way too high. How are standard account players supposed to even function? They're so limited on stash space, it's ridiculous. It goes beyond a casual player problem, it's just a storage problem. What would have saved this is, of course, allowing players to deposit items into the module they want to upgrade as they find them. That way, the storage problem goes away, and just like with our quests, we can visually see and feel the progression go along as we get closer and closer to meeting the requirements to upgrade that module we've spent the last week working on. And this has always been the Hideout's #1 issue from day one. Maybe with a little bit of feedback we can have the number of items reduced somewhat, but unless that happens, I got a decent number of rubles sitting in my stash if I liquidate all my barter items. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Let me know down in the comment section below your thoughts on the Hideout in its current form. What would you do to make it not as toxic to engage with? And be sure to subscribe for more videos about all the hardcore wipe changes, the good, the bad, and the downright unhinged. I hope to see you in future ones.